whose book is this?
Hazrat Isa.
Hazrat Isa and
The Jews.
Jews and Christians and okay. So, what is inside the Bible? Anybody? What is inside? You see in the Quran we have 114 chapters, right? Each chapter has verses, ayahs. In total, 6,276 verses, right? How about the Bible? What is the anatomy of the Bible, structure of the Bible? Anybody?
The Old and New Testament.
The Old Testament, New Testament, two major sections called the Old Testament and New Testament, yes? Four Gospels in which part? In the New Testament. So four Gospels are in the New Testament. We said we have two major sections. So my right is the Old Testament. That's section 1. And New Testament. That's section 2. So the Gospels, which we have four Gospels, they are in the New Testament. They are not the New Testament, they are in the New Testament. How many books we have in the New Testament?
17.
27. We have 27 books in the New Testament. 4 of them are Gospels, not Gospel, Gospels means we have 4 different Gospels in the New Testament. How about the Old Testament? What we have in the Old Testament?
Torah.
So-called Torah, right? But I will tell you that it's not actually Torah. It's so-called, they believe it's Torah. And then what else we have in the Old Testament? Okay, so let me give you a little explanation on the Bible, because we are going to compare these two books. That's it. We have very heavy task. By end of this course, you will be a little scholar of the comparative religions, at least Abrahamic beliefs. Okay, so at least you need to know what is this book, who wrote it, what is the language of this book, when they wrote it, what are the manuscripts, old manuscripts from this book, what this book says basically, right? So many other things. Let's say at the time of Jesus, we go back 2,000 years ago. At the time of Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, Jews had a temple, right? So Prophet Suleiman's temple, Ma'bad. They would go in the temple, read Torah. Some people would read other books, but it wasn't Torah, like book of Isaiah, Isaiah was a prophet. Some other people would read the book of Solomon, like Song of Solomon, or Wisdom of Solomon, and so on. So these were separate parchments. They weren't put together. They were like separate books. You would go grab, let's say you're grabbing Surat al-Fatiha, a separate booklet. Someone would grab Surat al-Nas, other one Kawsar, other one Baqarah. They weren't put together. I'm just giving an example. I don't say Quran was like that. I'm just saying example. So later on, Jewish scholars decided to organize it, put them together, and even translate it. The language of the Old Testament, now we are talking about Old Testament, not New Testament. The language of Old Testament was somehow not easy to understand for majority of people. It was ancient Hebrew written by Aramaic alphabet. This is an old ancient language. Now Jews are speaking Hebrew. However, this Hebrew is different from that Hebrew. So Jewish scholars at that time, even before Jesus, they translated their holy books. These were their holy books: Torah, Zechariah, Isaiah, Song of Solomon, Ezekiel, and so on and so on. 24 books. 24 books in today's Old Testament. Because that time were many more. So they translated in Greek. Why Greek? Because that time Romans were ruling Jerusalem, Palestine. And the Romans' official language was Greek. So they translated to Greek because people, the Jewish people, didn't know Hebrew. It was a forgotten language. When they were translating it, they imposed their own opinion on the original, so-called original text. They made lots of changes. How do we know it? Because we found very old manuscripts in Hebrew. We compared the translations, the Jewish translations of the Old Testament, with the ancient Hebrew. We realized they made lots of changes. Then they cut off some part of the book. They removed some parts in year 95 CE, Common Era. That means the 95 of the Christian calendar, right? They removed approximately 5 to 15 books, at least 5 books, from their own holy book. It's like someone, after Prophet, removes at least 5 surah of the Quran and says, no, these are not divinely, revealed books. Just remove it from Quran. That's what Jewish scholars did in year 95. They removed lots of these books, and then they end up with today's Old Testament. So Old Testament was written in ancient Hebrew. The oldest known ancient Hebrew, historically speaking, came to being 400 to 700 years after Moses. Let me break this down. Musa alayhi salam never spoke Hebrew, because that time there wasn't Hebrew language. Moses lived 3,400 years ago. 3,400 years ago, there was no language called Hebrew at all. But Torah is in Hebrew. Can Moses write Torah then? Let's say the Quran, today's Quran, is in Persian, for instance. Just example. And everybody agrees the original Quran was Persian, perfect, Persian. But Prophet Muhammad was speaking Arabic, and all his people, they all were Arabs. And as far as we know, they didn't know even Persian. None of those Arabs except Salman, and he was Persian, that's why he knew Persian. And he himself had to learn Arabic to speak with Arabs, right? So if the Quran is in Persian, can you really claim that Prophet Muhammad said it and 10 Arab scribes wrote it down? No, it's suspicious, right? So that's the story of Torah, today's story. All the scholars agree, Jewish scholars, Christian scholars, and historians agree. The Torah, or we call Torah, was written in ancient Hebrew. When ancient Hebrew came to being was 400, at least 400 years after Moses. It means Moses never spoke Hebrew. He didn't know even what is Hebrew. Harun never spoke Hebrew. Israelite at that time didn't know what is Hebrew even. Solomon didn't know, David didn't know, and many other prophets. So we can conclude that today's Bible or today's Torah is not the Torah Quran speaks of. Quran speaks of the Torah revealed to Moses. So it must be in a language that Moses used to speak with his people. So today's Torah, which is in all ancient Hebrew, is not the Torah of Moses. Now let's go to Gospels. Injils, not Injil, Injils, Anajil, Gospels. We have 4 Gospels: Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. Gospel of Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. 4 Gospels, right? So today's scholars, 90% of them, I'll say what the other 10% say, agree that these Gospels were written originally in Greek. Greek language, right? But whenever Jesus was talking to his people, his disciples, he was talking Hebrew and Aramaic. And Hebrew and Aramaic, they are sister language. Arabic, Hebrew, Aramaic, these are sister languages called Semitic or Semitic languages. Arabic, Hebrew, Aramaic. Jesus would speak Hebrew or Aramaic. Greek is totally alien to these languages. It's like Persian and German. It's completely different language. Or Chinese and English. If someone brings a holy book for Chinese people in Beijing, I don't expect they bring an English book and read English to Beijing farmers and people. No, fishermen. They would read in Chinese. He had to bring a holy book in Chinese. So Jesus, according to Bible, was teaching in Hebrew and Aramaic. But the Gospels are in Greek language. Can we claim disciples wrote it, or Jesus said it, or Jesus wrote it? No. In best case, we can say these Gospels are the translation of the Jesus' words, stories, and disciples' words and stories. The translation, not the original. And we know when you translate a book, a text, what happens. The meaning, the concept might be lost there. Especially the cultures are different. You translate Shahnameh Ferdowsi in English. I was reading some of these verses, the shares of Shahnameh and Masnavi in English. I was almost laughing. This is different. That says something different because the culture is different, right? So they translated Jesus' teachings to Greek. As I said last week, Greeks don't have even word for God. Greeks don't have word for God, for the word God, God the Creator, for Allah. They don't have a word for it. How then you can translate the Prophet's teachings in that language? They lack the culture of prophethood. They lack the culture of monotheism. You can translate, yes, but you need to write down the original word side by side. You have to keep that original book, the original word, and you are saying Jesus never had a book in Hebrew and Aramaic. Disciples never had a book in Hebrew and Aramaic. This is what Christians are claiming. So that means their entire book is just not reliable. It's, in best case, it's only translation of the Jesus teachings. They can disagree with that because that's what they also believe. They say this is the translation of what Jesus was teaching. And we know when you are translating Hebrew and Aramaic to Greek, you are in big trouble because there are words in Greek, in Hebrew and Aramaic that Greeks lack. And there are words in Greek Hebrews don't have, Jews don't have. So there is a conflict of literature and the culture and theology. So what Christians and Muslims believe?